All right, so what you see on the screen right now is my dashboard. This is going to be different from your dashboard because you haven't been invited to all of these courses. So there are some courses in here that you may be very interested later on, such as Skills USA. But these are all the courses that you're going to go through in the program. So where you find the Mallory project, which is the first actual Revit project that we're going to do other than the essential training for Revit, is going to be under Drafting Detailer 2. So when you see the module screen come up, which is the home page for Drafting Detailer 2, you're going to go down to the second module, which is the Mallory tutorial. You're going to click on assignments, and you're going to see 3 downloads there. The first 2 are PDFs, which are intended as resources for you to be able to lay out the Mallory project, which is a 2-story residential frame house with a porch, etc. And then finally, the last one is an example project, which, like most example projects, is going to have plenty of errors, but you can take it as a guideline. This was an older video or older Revit file that one of my students made maybe about 5 years ago or 4 years ago. His name was Jordan, obviously, and this is his project right here. All right, so the 2 examples for the first Mallory Revit PDF and the Mallory ADD Chapter 18 Revit, um, you're to download those and take a look at what the information gives. This one that you're looking at right now is actually found in your architectural book that you needed to purchase eventually. Um, it's found at the end of Chapter 18. And if we actually can zoom in a little bit better into that, you have um, a perspective that shows the front of the building, so it gives you some information. Again, I'm going to be giving you artistic license and design license a little bit on this, so you can modify it accordingly. It doesn't have to match perfectly. And then you have some information here that gives you general dimensions, additional information regarding the layout of the rooms, the closets, etc. And both floors are going to be on there. There are going to be some recommended changes to this that I will recommend in terms of making sure that the second roof hip set right here occurs in the corners, which means that both porches need to be the same size. The second drawing, and I actually contacted this company. Let me see if I can open this guy up. Well, it really doesn't want to open up, but let's go ahead and let's make it bigger in here. This gives you additional information, and it also gives you a rear perspective, which gives you a little more clarification on what the design or the intended design of the Mallory is. It's got a gable end rear attachment that overhangs the 2 floors um, to the back of it. And you can tell that the pitch of the roof is much lower than the primary roof at the top. And it should match the porch of the lower roof for the porch down below. So based on all this information, and this is one of the beauties of the double screens that you should have, or some kind of a second device, so that you can have these drawings open so that you can begin laying them out. This one obviously only has dimensions for the rooms inside, so it requires a little bit more interpolation. Whereas the other one that we have in here has actual dimensions that can begin to lay out the rooms inside, etc. There are some exceptions to the rule that don't give you much information. For example, the width of this utility room is not indicated, as is the bathroom indicated right in here, or the distance from here to this wall. So those are the type of things that you may need to interpolate, or if you want to take them from Jordan's project, you can use those as guidelines. What we're going to do in this project is I'm going to show you how to start a Revit project. So your start screen should look something like this. Hopefully, um, can you guys see my screen? Okay, so I've got a bunch of projects in there that I've been working on at home and helping also with some of the students in terms of their senior exhibitions. So you have two things. You have projects up at the top, which are called models in this case, and then you have families. Families are like in AutoCAD architecture would be like door types, etc. In here, in Revit, it's a little bit different by family, and then within that, it's got different types. So we're going to start a new project. You're going to go to Models up here. You're going to go to New, and we're going to pick a new project, and we're going to pick a template file. The default template file is Imperial Multidiscipline. This creates a very good template file for you to start a more complex project or a commercial project. In this case, we're going to go basic. So we're going to browse for a simpler template that we can use. So I'm going to click Browse, and you're going to get a pop-up window that comes in here. You're going to see the multi discipline template is highlighted. Just to the left, you're going to see one called Default. That's the one we're going to use. So I'm going to double click it. Actually, I'm just going to click it and hit Open. And then you can see it's been called out right there. It's a template file, and I'm going to go ahead and do OK. And if I zoom out of this, you can see this is a very simple template. The way I've set up my Revit, because I hate scrolling up and down, I've set my properties palette on the left-hand side, and I've set my project browser on the right-hand side. As opposed to the multi-use template, this is a very simple template. It just has the views that are dependent on the levels. It also has the standard site, ceiling plans, and basic elevations. What you see right here is level 1. That's what it defaults to. And that's what we're going to call, like we did in the northern home, that's going to be our main elevation. You can leave the name level 1 if you want at this point. If you wanted to change that um, to floor 1 or main level, you can do that too. But for now, I'm going to leave it as level 1. Um, the icons that you see located here are actually your elevation icons. If I double click on this, it's going to switch you to front elevation. In this case, it's the back elevation, the north. I can flip back to the other drawing, and I'm going to go ahead and close that. This is going to be the south, the north, the east elevation, and the west elevation in there. When you do click one of those, double click the arrow in the front, or you go over to your project browser and go down to, let's say, south elevation. There you can see the levels that have been set up right in here. Level 0 is what we're going to call our main elevation. We're not going to create a top of subfloor or anything at this point. We're just going to leave it as level 1. Level 2 is going to be the floor, the top of the floor for the second floor. And we're going to leave it at 10 feet. And this is one of those interpretations that is not given. The information is not given on the resources that you've been provided. So we're going to provide a main level, level 1, which from floor to ceiling is going to have 9 feet, and we're going to give it 1 foot of structure, which then would create what we have right here, which is our level 2. Now, if we need to create a third level, which we will, is going to be the top of the plate of the walls for the second floor. So when we create the second floor, we're going to put the top of wall elevation as one of our levels, which is going to be the bearing point for the trusses and or rafters that are on there. We may have some subsequent levels after that for maybe top of beam for the porch beam that goes around. We also may have um, a top of porch elevation later on, but at this point, we really don't need to do that. So how do we create a new level? There's a couple of different ways to do it. You can actually right click on this one, and then it says create similar, and you can basically go up to a certain elevation right in here and create right in there. And now we have a level 3. Now, all of these levels are measured from our benchmark elevation, which is going to be 0, 0, and level 1. So I'm going to change the number on this, and I want to make that 19 feet, which is going to be the top of the plate. I'm going to go ahead and pull this guy. If I click on this, you see that it gets a second level on the tag, but I'm going to go ahead and start dragging this over so it matches what we have right now. And those can be edited later on. All right, let's go back to level 1, and we can start drawing. Another piece of information that these drawings did not give you, right in here, or the other one, is what size walls we're going to do. Now, in real construction, you would have what's called a composite wall. It's made up of different components, such as the stud, then the sheathing, the drywall on the inside, maybe siding, maybe an airspace, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to go generic on this. And what I mean by generic is one of the wall selections that you have is generic 8, generic 6, generic 4. For the exterior walls, we're going to use generic 6. With one exception, for the interior walls, we're going to use generic 4. So I'm going to have this drawing. You're not going to see it, but I'm going to have it off to the side on my um, second screen, and I'm going to be using it to draw my walls in this. So where do we start? Go to the architecture tab on the top and click on the wall. And you're going to see that your whole ribbon that goes across the top has changed. Under the architecture tab, once you click wall, it gives you some options in terms of how to draw them. When you look at the wall that is selected, the default at this point says basic wall, generic 8 inches. So we're going to click on the little arrow right next to it. We're going to start with our exterior walls. So I'm going to scroll through here and see if I can find one that says generic 6. And if I scroll up, you're going to see the location right here. All right, so once selected, I can start drawing in here. So I'm going to start by drawing the back. Let's start by drawing. I'm going to forget about the porch right now, and I'm going to start drawing the walls for the house itself. Looking at the drawings that's available to me, I can tell that the width of the entire building, not counting the porch, is 22 feet. And I can see that up on the second floor, and we're going to be lining up our walls in there. So first thing I'm going to do is I am going to take a look at my properties for my generic 6 as I'm going to draw them. Right now, it says it's going to be drawing based on the wall center line. I do not want to do that. I want to draw something that has a separate option. I'm not going to use core center line. I'll probably be using finish face exterior or finish face interior, one of those two. And again, this is only because we're going generic in this case. So we're assuming that this wall that we're going to be drawing in here is only going to be represented in a limited number of drawings that we're going to do at 1/4 inch scale in a floor plan sheet. So what I'm going to do is I can click right in here, or there's part of the ribbon right across in here. I can also do it right up in here. So I'm going to do finish face exterior, and I am going to start drawing, and I'm going to try to draw as much as possible within my elevation tags. Those are movable, so don't worry too much about that. So I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to come across this way. And as you see, we've got a dimension starting at the top. I'm going to switch that to 22 and click. Then I'm going to start going down in direction. And I can tell that based on the drawings that I have here, that that dimension is going to be 43 feet. So I do 43 feet, and I come in here like this, and I'm going to start moving to the left. And when I get to be parallel with the wall that I drew up above, you're going to see that's 22 feet. I'm going to click in here, and I'm going to close it off. Now, this is not obviously the correct footprint at this point, but it gives me a pretty good starting point to draw the bottom level. All right, so now what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start developing some distances that I want to relate. If I pull this back in here, what I have is a full dimension from here on the right to this point right in here, which was the 43 feet. But I've done this wall as 22 feet across, which lines it up with this. So if you notice, there's the dimension right there. Now what I got to do is I got to start cutting this portion out of it. And I don't have dimensions for that, but I do have a dimension where this location of this wall is from looking at the second floor. So if I look at the second floor right here, you can tell that that's 11 feet to the outside wall on the second floor, which happens to coincide with this wall right here. That becomes what we call a bearing wall, and that's the only interior 6-inch wall that we have. You're free to ask questions, by the way, as we proceed with this. I know some of you have already done this and are well past this point. You may have had different workflows to get to the same point, but this is intended to be the workflow that I use to be able to lay this out. So this part is real easy to do. The only ones I'm going to have a little bit more problem with is going to be to lay out this cut right in here, but it shouldn't be too much work. So I'm going to minimize that right now. And let's call it up one more time. And I think that was 11 feet. So let's go back to that. I'm going to take this wall. And again, everybody does this differently. I'm actually going to copy it. I could have offset it. And I'm going to copy it down 11 feet. And my distance from the outside of that wall to the outside edge of this wall should be 11 feet. So I've got that laid out that way right now. All right, let's go back to the drawing once again and see what information we can get from that. All right, so they do give you some room sizes in here to work with. And as you can tell that the mudroom, it says is 5 feet from the outside edge of this wall to the inside edge of this wall. And the reason I'm saying that is because typically the dimensions that you have in here are inside clear dimensions. They don't include wall widths, etc. Most plans will have those dimensioned clearly so that you know either what the width is, including a wall, or inside dimensions, and they'll dimension the wall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I am going to, I can draw either a guideline from here to here, or I can offset this same wall up the 5 feet, but I then need to add the width of the wall to it. So I would offset it 5'6". So I'm going to take this right in here, and I'm going to either copy or offset. This time, let's go ahead and use offset. That means you actually have to type right in here what the offset distance is. I'm going to type 5'6", and I'm going to offset that wall at that point. So now what I need to create this back area, at least horizontally, has already been decided. Let's go back to this plan and let's see what we've got. Well, they got a width for the mudroom, which is 9'6", but I do not have a dimension here. So this might be something that is based on experience, but usually with your washer and dryer, you want a little bit more width. By the way, if this is a bathroom right in here, you don't want anything less than 5 foot interior width at this point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off, and I may modify this. I'm going to make this 6 feet across in here. I then would have a 4-inch wall. And I'm going to make this 5 feet. It's going to give me this cut right here. The only thing that's going to be left to do is to make this point right in here. So let's start with that. Now, one of the things that I want to be able to do is change. At this point, these are all going to be interior walls, or at least to start with. The first wall I'm going to do is going to be an interior wall. I sometimes will use detail lines, and I will then move them. In this case, I want to move it 6 feet. And I'm going to use that as a guideline for my new wall. I'm going to go to architecture wall. Now I'm going to switch from basic wall generic 6. I'm going to switch to generic 4. Well, I've got a little bit of a problem right in here because I don't find that wall size in my wall types that I have here. So I'm going to take the generic 6 and I'm going to create a generic 4 out of that. I'm going to go to edit type. I'm going to go to duplicate. Don't ever overwrite or change the dimensions on what you have already. Always be able to use that. I'm going to change this to 4 inches. Now, if you take a look at it, there's one more thing that we need to change, which is our structure. Because right now it is set to what we had before, which was 6 inches. And we're going to switch this to 4 inches. I'm going to do OK. I'm going to apply and do OK. And I've got a new basic wall in here. I'm going to use that. It says finish face exterior. I'm going to use my guideline right in here. And it happened to be on the right side, exactly where I want it. Now, what am I going to do different here? Well, if I wanted it on the inside, I would hit my space bar and it's going to flip it back and forth. But I do want it on the outside right here. Okay. All right. Now, this wall right in here is going to disappear because it's going to make a turn vertically where my next wall might be located. All right. So my next wall, what I said we needed is a minimum of 5 feet inside. So what I can do, I can delete my guideline. I'm going to take this and I am going to copy it, and I'm going to copy it, let's say 5 feet over. Now, I've obviously made a mistake. The mistake was that I offset it exactly 5 feet, not taking into account the thickness of the wall. So a couple of things that I can do. I can move it over, or I can change this dimension down here to 5'4". Actually, right now it's located to the center line of the walls, which is a little bit of a problem. I want 5 feet clear. So I'm going to click on this little dot right here, which is called a witness line. And I'm going to find when it goes to the inside on both of those. That went to the outside, and now it's on the inside. So I need to change this one to 5 feet. Type in 5, and that wall moved over to the outside. Now you notice where the 2 dots are on this wall. They are located on the right side of the wall. I don't want a 4-inch wall here. I want a 6-inch wall because my porch outside is located here. So I'm just going to keep that highlighted. I'm going to go to my properties, and I'm going to go back to generic 6. And you notice it goes to the opposite side of where those dots were. That's the way it expanded. That's very similar to the justification line that you would have in AutoCAD architecture when you were doing the northern home. So now I can begin to edit this even more. This wall obviously is going to fill it this way, while this one is going to fill it this way. Everybody has a different way. I click on modify. I really like the trim extend to corner command, which kind of would be the equivalent of the fillet in AutoCAD architecture, or you can do basically trim extend, etc. I'm going to use this one, and I'm just going to click and click. I'm going to click and click at this point. If it can't keep elements joined, that's okay. I'm going to unjoin the elements at this point because it said you would lose the joint with this one in here. All right, so now looking at the plan again, the only thing I have is another break coming down in here somewhere. Again, I can even fillet this one, but I'm going to save that command because I'm probably going to need it down in here. Now, this one really doesn't have much information for that, but I know that I have a door that I need to fit in there. So if I take a look at right in here, this is a 3.0 door, a 3-foot door, and I want enough return on each side. Also, another governing factor may be the size of this door in here. I don't see anything else that would guide me for the width of this space inside here. And that's always changeable later on. If anybody can find anything that basically gives you that information other than the size of the doors and expecting the returns on both sides with the trim work, etc. I'm going to go ahead and make this about 4'6" or 4'8" or 4'4" to begin with, and we'll see how that looks. So I'm going to take my wall in here. I'm going to go ahead and copy it, and I'm going to copy it over about, I'm just going to do 5 feet now and see where that comes out. All right, so now I have another dimension in here that I can take a look at right in here, and I can do it to the outside right at this point because we're talking about a porch right in here. So, and I'm going to redo this one to the inside there. So if we do a beam across the top in here, we're still going to have quite a bit of space in here. We're going to have about 5 feet across, which is substantial. I'm going to switch that, and I'm going to switch it maybe to 4'8". Try to stay in round numbers as much as possible. And now I've got that located in there. All right, so I've got a wall in here that I want to serve two purposes. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and once again trim the corners using this one, unjoin the elements because it really can't find that one. And I'm going to go ahead and in this case, I'm going to use the extend command. I'm going to extend that to there and click to there. And then I can fill it right in here. All right. We talked about this being a generic 6-inch wall coming across right in here. In reality, what you're going to have is a condition where you've got an exterior wall in here that converts to the inside in here. Now, if this is an entirely bearing wall, more than likely the core requirements of that, which is your stud and the stud spacings, is going to be the same. But what's going to be different? Well, the difference is that this is probably going to have a different finish. The composition of that wall, other than the core, is going to be different. So what we need to do is we need to break this wall. And this is what I do in most cases. What I will do is I will go to this split element command up in here, and I can start here, and I'm just going to delete this. And I'm going to refill it this. And here's part of the problem. If I was just to bring this all the way to here, let's do that correctly. It wants to join the wall again. Okay. So I'm going to undo that. And I'm going to change the relationship of this wall to the other ones. This dot right in here, if I right click it, there's a little command that says disallow join. I'm going to click on that, and now I can drag it right to here. Now, if we were to give this wall a different, we could create another type just for that. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to edit type. I'm going to duplicate, and I'm going to say 6-inch, and I'm going to leave a space, and I'm going to put interior. You can abbreviate it if you want. I'm going to do OK. And I'm going to do structure edit. And for now, I'm going to leave it because right now the material that we have for all of them is by category, and we're going to be adding materials later on to this project. So I'm going to go ahead. Everything should be good. The structure also is going to stay at 6 inches for that wall. And I'm going to apply and OK. All right, so I've got basically a footprint of my main shell of the building. Obviously, there's missing interior walls in here. And I'm going to go ahead and close this wall across this way. And one other way to do this, I can drag this wall. Just make sure you stay in ortho and click that. I got one more wall that I want to add momentarily. And I'm going to go ahead and there's my basic 4-inch wall. I'm going to go ahead and use that. I'm going to start here. Now notice right now that wall is in the wrong location. I'm going to hit my space bar and run it across to here. And so I've got the shell laid out for the first level. Let's see what that looks like in 3D. You're going to go to the tabs up here and right above on the quick access bar right in here. You can go to the default 3D view, click on that. And you're going to see the first floor that we had laid out in 3 dimensions. This is a isometric view. Again, 30 degrees, etc. And we've got a couple of little problems. I'm going to go ahead and show it to the right side view. If you notice, if I click on one of the walls and I go to the properties, the base constraint is correct. I want that on level 1. My base offset is correct also. I'm not starting above or below the level 1. So that's going to be 0. My top constraint, however, is set to unconnected. Now, if I wanted to make this wall 40 feet, I could just type 40 and it would go up higher. But one of the things you may want to do, and I highly recommend it, is to tie the walls up to a level, whether it's level 1 or level 2. So if something changes, it'll accommodate the changes in height. And let me show you what I mean by that. I'm going to go ahead, since we only have walls in there, I'm going to highlight all the walls that I have in here. But instead of having a top constraint of unconnected, I'm going to set it to level 2. Now, if you notice, all my walls change now to level 2. If I was to change level 2 and make this 12 feet, watch what happens to the walls. It changes with it. And this may happen when you're in the design process, because you might find that you need maybe more of a floor cavity to get in all your plumbing. The structure might need to be thicker, or vice versa. You may be able to gain some. I'm going to switch that back to 10 feet. Now, in the construction for this house, we're doing what's called platform framing, which means that we do the walls for the main level going up, and then we do the rafters going across to the outside of the wall. They will be resting on the actual studs for the main level. Well, that structure, the composite for that floor, is going to have about 1 foot in this case. Northern Home, we only had 10 inches because we were using 2x10s. We're going to assume here that we're using 2x12s plus a subfloor, etc. So we actually should not be going up to level 2 with our walls. We should be a foot below that. So I'm going to highlight all the walls, and you can do it in 3D, by the way. That's the beauty of this, or in floor plan. I'm going to highlight them all in here. And if you see anything else come up along right here, that's a wall, that means you've picked something else. And you're going to get, just like you did in AutoCAD architecture, you're going to get a lot of blank spaces in here, or a mix of different things. I'm going to keep the top constraint up to level 2. That's good. But I said I need to be a foot below that. So my top offset, I'm going to put -1 foot. I'm assuming we're going to use it. And if you take a look at this, these walls just dropped, and we can look at it again in the south elevation. Now, once again, if I lower my level or raise my level, the wall will raise and drop with it. So you may want to start by going all the way to level 2, and then once you get a little bit more information on the structure, you can drop it. Again, if you have enough experience and so on, you're going to say, okay, I'm going to give it about a foot of structure. Always give it some depth of structure. Usually it's not going to be 4 inches or 6 inches unless you're pouring a slab. Usually the whole composition is going to be substantially more than that. All right, so let's go back to 3D. And we have the first level set up. I'm going to go to top view in 3D so I can take a look at that a little bit better. And I'm going to start drawing the second level onto this. So I'm going to get out of 3D. I'm going to switch over to level 1. And I'm going to now go over, you can tell that this is how much I've drawn in here. I'm going to go back over to my project browser on the right-hand side, and I'm going to go to level 2. I'm going to double click it. And you notice what I see is a faded halftone image of the first level. So we're going to use that as a guideline. This, once again, if you've done AutoCAD architecture, this is equivalent of bringing in an X reference as an overlay and putting it at -9, let's say. The difference between obviously AutoCAD architecture and this is that this is all incorporated into one simple file. So it's created all of these levels and so on, as opposed to creating different files, different DWG drawings for each level, and then you have to sit there and start putting them all together in views and in sheets, etc. All right, what you're seeing there is what we call an underlay. And if you look at your properties here on the left-hand side, right here under underlay, the range base that it's selected is level 1. You can always select none, but that's not going to help us too much. Okay, so I can apply that and it's gone. I'm going to go ahead and put it back in. and I am going to put level 1. And you notice it's going to come back in once I hit apply, and it's looking down. If you were doing ceiling plans or you needed to see something different that you needed to react to, you might want to look up. It's all going to vary. You're going to play with that back and forth. All right, so I'm ready to draw my level 2. Level 2, as I mentioned, is at 10 feet. So I'm going to go to walls. If you look at the base constraint that I select, there's level 2. I'm going to save myself some trouble here. Notice that the default is still unconnected 20 feet high. I'm going to go ahead and change that. I can change it up in here, or I can change it down here. I'm going to switch my top constraint from unconnected. I'm going to go ahead and do it up in here, and it's measuring the height of it. This time I'm going to go to level 3, which I said is the top plate for the walls. I'm going to go to level 3 right in here, and I'm not going to do any offset for that. So once I've got that level 3, my base constraint is level 2. I can start drawing. I'm going to go to the architecture tab, walls. I'm going to go ahead and find my exterior generic 6-inch, and I know it lays out perfectly over this space right in here. So I'm going to start in this corner, draw to here, draw to here, draw here, and close it up. And let's see what it looks like in 3D. And there we go. That probably looks familiar to you guys. That looks like something that we did in the Northern Home or in one of the samples that I did. All right, so we're starting to get a nice view in here. By the way, if you want to, just like you did with the view cube in a lot of the Autodesk products, you can look at it in perspective so that you get a little bit better view of what it looks like. A little more like your eye might see it. But for design purposes, probably the best way to go is with orthographic view, and it keeps it clean. All right, let's go back, and one of the things we're going to start adding now are going to be floors. So floors are something that you can draw a basic floor at first and then worry about the structure that you're building in. Again, more than likely, this is going to be a frame floor, which is going to be lifted up on a crawl space above the grade, above the ground. So let's assume it's going to be the same size as what we did for the second floor. So on the architecture tab on the top, I'm going to go to floor. I'm going to do floor architectural. And there we have a generic 12-inch. I'm going to go ahead, and in this case, I'm going to use, notice right up in here, it has boundary line. We're not going to have a sloped floor. We don't worry about span direction in here. I'm going to use one of these items right in here. You can draw line work. You can create rectangles or polygons or circles, arches, etc. They're editable, ellipses, or you can pick lines or pick walls. I prefer to pick lines rather than walls, but again, other people might pick the walls. I'm going to pick the lines in here, and I'm going to go on the outside. I'm not going to do anything with the porch areas right now. I'm just going to do it along here. I am on level 1. I'm going to pick that line, this line, this line, this line. And if done correctly, they sort of miter themselves or fillet themselves. I'm going to go ahead and hit the finish edit mode. And then you can tell that I've already got something in there. Let's take a look at it in 3D. And there's my floor for it right here. Let's do the same thing for level 2. Okay, we know we have the walls for level 2. I'm going to go ahead and once again go to the floor architectural, still set to generic 12. Here's some additional options that you have. And this time I'm just going to go, since my second floor is a simple rectangle, I'm going to use the rectangle right now. I could use any one of those methods, and I'm going to click from here to here. Now, one of the things you should always be aware of when you're doing that, take a look at your generic, your properties for the floor. Level is set to level 2. You could technically set it wherever you want on this drawing. Height offset from that level is going to be 0. Room bounding is, I don't even really look at that at this point, and we're pretty well set right in there. So I'm going to go ahead and finish the edit mode button. I haven't saved the project yet. That was a big mistake. I'm going to go ahead and save the project. And I guess I have to follow the rules. I have to give it a fancy name, right? I'm going to go pretty blank. Casa Mia. And save. All right, now if you look up in here, I usually don't like to attach the walls, but now if you look at the name up in here, it's changed to Casa Mia. This was the first time I saved. I could have lost all that work, by the way. So do as I say, not as I did in this case. Let's look at it in 3D. And there is the second level right there with the second floor. So, all right, let's continue. I'm going to go back to level 1. Now, based on the drawings that we have a small porch back here. And we also have a big porch going out in here. Now it tells you that this porch width, and by the way, this is only measuring to the center of the columns. I want to measure to the outside of where my deck is going to be. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that this front porch and the side porch are the same width as opposed to what they give you here. And the reason for that is because I like a cleaner condition for this hip set right here to hit right on the corner right here. Now, we were talking about floors at this point. So when we come out from, let's say, the mudroom down onto the porch, or from the front of the house, or from one of these sliders in here, if one of them is a slider, we're going to step down. You can step down either 4 inches or 6 inches down to the outside. Just for the sake of doing this, we're going to go ahead and step 6 inches down at this point, both in this porch and this porch. Now, because the distances are much less at this point, I'm going to use a different floor. Instead of going 12 inches, I'm going to go 6 inches at this point. I can always change that later, and I probably will, okay, depending on how the framing might work on this. So what I'm going to do at this point, I am going to go to Architecture tab. I'm going to go to Floor, Floor Architectural, and I'm going to see if there is a generic 6-inch. I don't see one. So guess what I need to do? I need to create one. Okay. So I'm going to do Edit Type. I'm going to duplicate, and I'm going to change this to generic 6-inch. Do OK. One thing I got to do is I got to edit this. My structure is going to be 6 inches. I'm going to do OK. Apply, do OK. And I should have a new generic 6-inch floor right here. Now, one of the things that I also mentioned was that we are stepping down 6 inches. So my height offset from level 1, we're going to change that to -6. And I need to put the inch symbol in there because Revit is based on feet as opposed to inches, which I think you've been used to in the past. So -6 inches, I'm going to click, and I'm going to create the perimeter for it. Pretty easy in most cases in here. This one I'm going to go ahead and do as a rectangle right here. Click it. And let's just see how well we did with that one. All right, so that looks pretty good. We are in what we call hidden view. If you click down here, you have your visual style. It's called in hidden line. There's wireframe, where you can see all the way through it. Hidden line, which you saw shaded. Consistent colors, which is pretty similar. Textures. And then finally realistic. Now in the realistic, it takes a little bit longer, but you notice it's all a dull gray at this point. This is just the default color that it's got for it at this point. I'm going to go back to hidden line. And if you want to make it look a little bit fancier, we can basically add shadows in it. So right in here under visual style, hidden line, under graphic display options, you can click on that. Under lighting, you can go to shadows here and you can pull it up to, let's say 25%. I'm going to apply and I'm going to do OK. And then right here, it says shadows off. I'm going to click on that and we get our shadows. Now I'm holding the shift key and the middle mouse button, holding them both down. And this allows me to rotate around the drawing as I see fit. And notice the shadows go off until I stop. By the way, if you also want to see them here, you can do the same thing. Click in here, go to graphic display option, lighting, and let's bring this one down to 25 feet again. The default's 50. Let's make this 25. So we're consistent. Apply, do OK, and go down here and turn shadows on. Level 2, if I turn shadows on immediately, you see how dark they are, right? So let's go ahead and go here to graphic display options, lighting. You don't have to worry about shadows up at the top at this point. When you get into a little bit more complex, a little further down, you'll be able to see that. So I'm going to go ahead and switch this to 25 and do OK. And there we go. All right, let's finish up with the last porch that we need. We're in level 1 right in here. And I've got a porch that wraps around this way and ends somewhere in here. Where it ends in here, I really doesn't matter at this point since I'm editing it anyways, but you might find the information in here. They give you the 7'6", so I'm probably going to make both porches 7'6" at this point. I haven't added other parts of it like this second floor portion for the chimney. I haven't added the chimneys. I haven't added a lot of stuff inside. I'm just worried about the shell right now. All right, so I'm going to visually select my point right in here. And then later on, I'm going to go ahead and change it so that it matches what I want to do at this back point. I may end up lining it up with this wall. I may pull it a little bit more. Again, this is part of that design freedom that you guys can have. All right, so let's go ahead. I'm going to minimize this, and I'm going to start to draw my porch. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and I am going to go to the architecture tab, go to floors. I'm going to use the same one I used for the porch in the back, floor architectural. Defaults back to my generic 6-inch. But this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by using pick lines. I'm going to pick this line and this line. But then I'm going to switch to line work. And I'm going to come down here. I can visually do 7-6. And I can visually come out to here. In this case, I may want to copy this line or offset it, and I'm going to do it 7'6" this way. And I'm going to temporarily draw a boundary line somewhere in this point right in here. And now I'm going to use the trim the corners. These two are probably okay right in there. By the way, if I was to leave it the way it was like this, with this line extended, and you tried to close it, it's going to give you an error right in here. So you just continue and you fix the error. All right, once again, I'm going to take a look at it. And before I click the finish edit mode, I'm going to check my height offset. It defaults to the last thing you did, so you got to be real careful with that. But this is where I wanted it at 0.6. If I was drawing a floor inside, obviously would want it different. I'm going to go ahead and hit the finish mode. And there I've created my porch out front. Let's look at it at 3D. And there it is right there. Any questions so far, guys? What we're doing? This is pretty basic for beginning the layout. So what I would do at this point, if you want to continue further with the project, is start laying your inside walls. Remember, the exact location of the walls are always movable, okay? So if you don't have a dimension, let's just graphically get them done. The things that you should definitely pay attention to is what level you're drawing them, what height they are, if they are attached or are dependent on a level, which I suggest. Make sure you worry about the offset, etc. Okay. So with that, I think what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and, if I can work this out, I'm going to go ahead and conclude the meeting at this point. And what we'll do is the next time around, we'll go ahead and um, start at the next point. So I'm going to stop sharing.
You're still too evil, no ying.